Andy.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Welcome to Nashville. Oh, wait, you're in Nashville. I'm not.
No, you're allowed to say welcome to Nashville because I still feel like I'm new here. So thank you for welcoming me. I
How
appreciate
long
it.
has it been?
Well, it's funny. It's been a year and a half, but
Wow.
people go, "Well, shouldn't you be acclimated by now?" And I say, "No, I am me, and I am not acclimated yet. It's still so." I hate the word "should." One of my favorite authors ever. His name's Brendan Manning. He passed away a few years ago, maybe now, and he has this great line about, especially for Christians, but I think it's true of all people, is that we use the word should too much. And, he'd be speaking at churches and he'd throw out this joke, which was like racy at the time. But he said, people, you need to quit shoulding all over yourself, you know? And so I hate the word should because it's all about regret. So sorry to rant within the first 30 seconds, but
Well, another
yeah.
should item I have for you is you should change the location information on your Skype handle
Oh, okay. All right.
because that
I
is
will.
not updated to your new geographic location.
There you go. Yeah, I don't use Skype very much. I'm a Zoom guy,
Really?
but I am. I'm
Okay,
a big
well,
fan.
we're gonna dive into that. And
All right, we'll talk about Zoom.
all right.
Big- Zoom.
So I'm just gonna read your bio for folks who don't already know and kind of follow all the cool stuff you do.
For
online.
everyone. That would be everyone. But go ahead. That's fine.
Andy Traub was born. You were born in Indiana?
I was. I was like, how is this wrong already? 4 words in, and I screwed up my bio. Yes, I was born in Indiana.
Okay. I guess
And
you
this
wrote
is a 4-hour interview.
you wrote your bio accurately.
Yeah.
I was just doubting it from the
I don't have
outset.
I don't have people to write my bio.
And Andy Traub was born in Indiana, but now lives south of Nashville, Tennessee. He has a love for creating spoken content, which means that his writing style is characterized by a conversational tone and an ability to be vulnerable with purpose. That's a cool phrase, vulnerable with purpose.
Thanks.
Readers also enjoy multiple layers when experiencing his books. He embeds his own audio content directly into his books, allowing readers to truly hear the author's voice. And the author is Andy. Most of his books also have a corresponding podcast show available for free on iTunes. Traub is proud of his writing and his work creating many podcasts. With Seth Godin's permission, he started the unofficial Linchpin podcast in 2011 and has interviewed dozens of thought leaders on that particular show. In general, his shows are often praised because of the unique and challenging questions he asks his guests. He is also an Evernote expert, a TEDx speaker, and one of the most helpful guys online. When he's not writing books or recording interviews, you can find him at home playing with his 3 young children or taking his wife on a date on date night. Was it 3 or 4 years ago that Forbes wrote an article on you talking about sort of how you got your family out of this $15,000 of debt, taking matters into your own hands, writing an
Yeah.
ebook that became successful,
Yeah.
and then that sort of jumpstarting your journey as an entrepreneur. So can you kind of tell us that story in your
Yeah.
words? Just why are you here today, Andy, standing at your stand-up desk in Nashville?
I am standing at my stand-up desk because of your generosity
Oh,
and your faith in me.
well,
So thank you for that.
That's not the right answer.
Specifically right here. But going back to that moment, I was doing some podcasting and I interviewed Jeff Goins, who lives about 15 minutes from here, and he's at goinswriter.com. And I wanted to, I basically heard him moderate a call. I was a student in his course. And I called him. I said, "Hey, can I help you with that? Because you didn't do very well. Like you seemed overwhelmed,
Wow,
And it's
okay.
like, because I was really overwhelmed. So I said, all right, well, I specialize in helping moderate calls and webinars, things like that. So can I help you? And we'll talk about payment later. But I would, you have a huge platform. I'd love to help. And so through that course, I was moderating calls, but I wasn't actually doing the course. I'd stopped doing the coursework, which is called Tribe Writers, and it helps you, finish your book and build a tribe. But I kind of got tired of talking about it without doing it. I felt pretty hypocritical, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish something. At the time, I was hosting a podcast with a guy named Andy Andrews, and the reason I got that gig is I reached out to them and said, Andy needs a podcast, and they said, we agree, but how can you help us? And I said, I'll host it for free, which I did for a long time. And that was massive exposure. But I'm helping Andy, and And I said, hey, Andy, I'm reading one of your books, and I just saw the section about getting up early. I think that we should do a 30 email in a row, a daily thing for folks to just sort of train them to get up early. And they said, that's a great idea, Andy Traub. Why don't you do it and not Andy Andrews? And I was like, can I keep the email subscribers? And they're like, sure, you're going to basically do everything. So I talked about it on his show, and then I had these 30 emails. And then I started helping Jeff, and I felt like I needed to write a book, but I didn't really want to write a book because who wants to sit down and write 300 pages or something? I'm not that smart. And I thought, what do I have that's like book worthy? And I thought, I have these 30 emails. So I took those 30 emails and I fleshed them out, made them longer, and then I wrote about 30 or 40 pages to begin the book. And they were all about building the habit of getting up early. And I published it, and because I knew a few people that were very kind and generous and blurbed about the book and talked about the book. And in addition, I also just started to practice what they preach about being generous. And I started to say, hey, if you sign up, I'll give you the book for free. Not a chapter, not 2 chapters, the whole thing when it's done. And I started to get, I think I ended up with about 700 people. And then when the book came out in electronic format, I sent it to those people in Kindle and PDF. I might have sent them in Word, I don't know, everything. And then I started to sell it, and it started to do really well. And something, a huge mistake I made is I left it only in Kindle format for like a year, and I could have sold a lot more.
Versus not in PDF, you're saying? Or versus on audio?
Well, what I did is when I sold it, I eventually finished the book, put it on Amazon, and I didn't print it out so you could actually
printing. You're saying
print.
Versus
Yeah,
print.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to make sure people realize that I make huge mistakes. So that was a huge mistake. That was probably a $15,000, maybe $20,000 mistake, which is a big mistake to me. Yeah, times 20,000. And so other people started to talk about it. A friend, she lives here now too, about 15 minutes away, 20 minutes. It was Crystal Payne from MoneySavingMom.com. She did a 30-day challenge on the book, so she walked through the book for 30 days. And again, it was kind of a friend of a friend conversation. And then I just started to sell a bunch of them. It just gained steam, and I priced it right. And by price it right, I mean I didn't price it cheap. I think it was like $7.99, which then was a lot for an ebook, especially for a first-time author. And I just sold enough that we got our family out of debt. That's really the story. And then I went on Dave Ramsey's show. By then I had met John Acuff, who's a friend, and he had a new book coming out. And I know enough about promotion that I called Dave's people and I said, listen, we're debt-free. We just became debt-free. I know John has a new book coming out. I've never told this story publicly, by the way. Those calls are not unplanned. They're very, very planned when you hear the Dave Ramsey debt-free scream. And so I said, hey, I would love to talk about how John influenced me. That way you can plug his new book and then talk about Dave, of course, as well. And I'll mention my book. Well, when I mentioned my book and how much I had sold, Dave said, hey, I used to sell books out of the trunk of my car, and I'd give my right leg to be able to sell that many, make that much. How did you do that? And at one point he goes, man, let's sell some more of your book. Well, Dave Ramsey has, I don't know, 3 million listeners, 4 million listeners. So I didn't sell like 1 million books, but because a lot of his listeners are cheap, but they wouldn't buy an $8 ebook. So I ended up selling a lot, and then I got picked up in Forbes, and that's how they told my story of writing a book to get out of debt. And it just really put me on a trajectory of success that we were able to move, afford to move, have the freedom to move. And we moved about 1.5 years ago to just south of Nashville.
Wow. I did not know the Dave Ramsey part. I didn't understand that you sold books also on the Dave Ramsey show. So that was you.
Yeah, that was another.
You called in and did the debt-free stream on his show, and then separately. That's really awesome.
Yeah, so that was another. that was like the comeback. It was like kind of died down. I'd made my money. And again, it was just being strategic. It was just saying, hey, I want to help John, and we can talk about his book, and because it just, and it was funny when I listened, because obviously, I recorded the call. I kind of insulted Dave, like, because I said, hey, Dave, no offense to you, but like John's been a huge help to me. Which was really not a good choice of words.
Right,
I could,
right,
you
right.
know,
Right.
like anyway, it was just I would not have said it that way if I would have thought it through. But I don't think a lot of things through. I just do stuff. So anyway,
So I I love this idea of everyone knows what mentoring is or thinks he knows what mentoring is when we think about sort of one-on-one mentoring or
yeah,
mentoring in a group, peer-to-peer mentoring. But there's this other type of mentoring, which
yeah,
you and I were sort of riffing on before. Is it indirect mentoring? Is it unofficial mentoring?
yeah.
But it's this whole idea of being mentored by someone who doesn't know they're mentoring you, and that sounds
Yeah.
creepy, but it's not. It's being
No, it's
mentored
awesome.
by an author, say, or
Yeah,
some speaker you follow or something like that. And I think
yeah.
you have a ton to share on this, particularly in relation to this cool podcast you put together about 5 years ago that
Mm.
kind of, got big in the space of podcasting, and it was all about Seth Godin and what you learned from him. So can you kind of share
Yeah.
about share that story and
Yeah. So let me be blunt about this first of all. Like I really don't like it when people take credit for things that they shouldn't take credit for. So let me be very clear. Most people listen to my podcast because they think Seth Godin did the podcast. But then they listen and they're okay with it. But and again, maybe this was bold or maybe this was just ignorance. Sometimes they're very similar. The action is very similar to where 5 or some years ago, I got this book Lynchpin. I'm sitting there reading it. I'm reading it, and I just go, man, I can't keep reading it. I made a tweet at one point, and I said, I need just a bucket of highlighter to dip Lynchpin in because it's all just one big. I mean, I literally had to stop highlighting because I was like, Andy, you can't highlight the whole book because highlight by definition is like to highlight a section, right? And if it's the whole thing, then you're not highlighting anymore. You're just coloring the
you've
book,
lost
right?
the point.
Right. That's a control all, right?
You were doing the
Anyway,
brain coloring before it was a thing.
that's right. That's right. So I stopped reading the book and I emailed Seth Godin. I don't know how I got his email. I think it's just out there or something. But I email him and I say, Mr. Godin, big fan. Appreciate you very much. I have had some success podcasting. This is before podcasting was as big as it is now. So yeah, maybe he believed me and actually had some stuff you could go look at. And I said, I would love to take the ideas that you have in Lynchpin and just interview people that I think are linchpins and talk about the book. And he wrote back, sounds like a great idea. Go for it. And then I replied, as I was like, oh, okay, great. I got to move on this. I need a logo. And I was like, oh, well, I want to use his logo from his book. And I said, can I use the book cover? And he said, ask this person at the publisher. And I asked them, and they said, ask Mr. Godin. And I went to him, and I said, they said, ask you. And he said, go for it. Just use the
Wow.
word unofficial. Yeah, which would like
Wow.
never happen today. Like, let's both acknowledge that. Like,
Wow.
I don't know how that happened. I got to find those emails. I'm sure I still have them. But he said, yeah, just use the word unofficial so people know it's not me. Okay. And this is like, those were as long as his emails were. Like, I'm not summarizing it. That's how he writes email.
That's how he writes blog posts, right?
Yeah, and blog posts. And so that's what I did. I started a podcast and I put up that logo. And, for a long time, if you typed in Seth Godin into iTunes, it was the #1 result. It's probably still in the top 4 or 5. And I just interviewed some thought leaders and it went really, really well. I abandoned it later on. It's still out there. I didn't delete it. About every, I don't know, month, week or so, I think I should go back and do some more of those. But I don't know what I would do with them. But by taking that permission, I got to talk to really neat people. And it was totally because I said, hey, Seth Godin gave me permission to do a podcast based on his book. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, okay, well, if Seth gave you permission, then you must be legit. Mm-hmm. And that was like an email, right? So I did that also with another friend, Dan Miller. He wrote a book called 48 Days of the Work You Love, another one called No More Mondays. And a friend and I, Justin Lucasavage, he and I did a No More Mondays show. And Dan's like, all right, guys, go for it. And we literally just open up the book and find a section and go, let's talk about the section today. You think Dan cared? No, he was like pumped.
Okay.
Like, thanks for doing my promo, guys. Right? So we did that for probably a year and then we got bored and quit because he's good at quitting too. So that, and I did that because I felt like I could honor his message. And he's been a mentor for a long time. I tell people, and this is funny, but it's not a joke, that I worship two people, and it's Jesus and Seth Godin, always in that order. But sometimes it gets a little too close, and I got to push Seth back. But it's like, I'm sure that I read Seth Godin more than I read my Bible. Like I'm very sure of that. Like, I read my Bible, but like,
but you read Seth Godin.
But I Seth's a little easier to understand, a little more applicable. But yeah, I mean, I treat a lot of his books like sacred text. You know what I mean? And I just have a great esteem for him, and he's been a huge mentor of mine.
Wow. And
I've never met him. Here's a fun one for mentors. You'll love this. I email him one day and I say, hey, I'm going to be in the area. I literally just want to walk by and shake your hand, and then I'm going to leave you alone. And he wrote back. He used the word alas, which I thought was funny. I feel like maybe that's his favorite word, to like tell people to go away. Alas, Andy, that is not possible. Something. I won't be around. Or no, I don't let people. Because you imagine you've got so many millions of people that follow you. If you let everyone who want to just stop by and shake your hand, you're never getting your work done. So the irony is, I've never seen him live. I've never met him. I've emailed him with him probably 10 times in my life. And he said no to me meeting him. But I still have a great respect for him.
Well, and that hasn't taken away from everything you've learned in any way.
No. I mean, it doesn't. I don't have to meet him. That's the great thing about mentors. I don't have to meet him. That's the amazing thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think of mentors, you think of after-school programs. You think of, this person, I'm going to go out and take them out to lunch. Uh-huh. You don't have to meet your mentors anymore because they share so much of who they are online. Huh. I mean, here's another example of this. And this is like, if you would have interviewed me 2 weeks ago, this would be a totally different answer. Gary Vaynerchuk, okay? Uh-huh. I'll make this brief. A friend, I appreciate his hard work. I always felt like he was way out of balance and he was too crass for me, okay? This is up to 2 weeks ago. A month ago, he sends me a free copy of his book. I won a copy of it on an Instagram contest. Mm-hmm. A buddy mentioned me, and I said, hey, I don't think we're going to win, but you got to buy a lottery ticket if you want to win the lottery. Mm-hmm. And that was my little cryptic way of saying, hey, I challenge you to not send me this book. And they sent me the book.
Wow.
So here's the funny thing. They sent me the book. I won, right? Okay, out of thousands of entries. They didn't put enough postage on the book, Claire. So I had to pay $1.50 to get the book, which I thought was funny. And again, I'm using that against them because I'm kind of like, Gary V, classy move, buddy. You send me a free book and I have to pay for it, right?
That's really
but that's just me being negative.
But
okay, I'm just being open here. Okay, it is funny. It was funny, but I didn't like email and be like, "Thanks for making me pay $1.50." But because it's like a $20 book. Anyway, it was very generous of them. But again, I'm holding that against him. And then I see he's going to be at this Social Media Marketing World event that I went to, and I saw him interview Seth Godin. Worst interview I've ever seen of Seth Godin.
Wow.
He talks over him. Seth asks, "Has anyone ever walked out of an interview with you?" Meaning, like, I might do that. Gary was in his element. He was at, his company, and he was just talking over Seth. It was a bad interview. I think Gary did a really bad job, and he probably would say that now, going back to look at it. So I sit in the third row of Social Media Marketing World, 3,000 people in the audience, because I want to see who he really is. I want to see if I can decipher that. And after his talk, after really listening to him, I sent him a tweet. This is like in the last week, and I said, Gary, I want to apologize publicly. I have been judging you unfairly. I think you're a good guy. And then hashtag apology or something like that. Mm-hmm. He sent me a 25-second video on Twitter. This is like in the last week. Andy, thank you so much for sending me that. I get it, man. I put off this thing. I say I don't care, but I really do care. And it means a lot that you apologized. Appreciate you, man. Keep up the good work. Okay. So,
what a story.
So Gary Vee is a mentor. Why? Because I met him, because he sent me a tweet, because he sent me a book? No, because I've been following him and listening to him, and now I look at him like, oh, you're just another human. You struggle with turning your phone on. You have an ego like me, right? And so he's a mentor, and so I listened to him and Lewis Howes have a conversation yesterday on my way to drive this little town south of me. These people are mentors, and it's unbelievable to me that just because I have a phone and speakers and the internet, that I get mentored by these people all the time. It's unbelievable.
I love this. So kind of my last question on this topic is, what do you do to make sure that you remember to find these mentors and find these people, given that you have this busy life, you're an entrepreneur, you've got the calendar behind you,
Oh,
of
sure.
all those things you've got to be doing. How do you
Yeah.
make this important?
You have to be honest with how stupid you are.
Oh.
Like, are you kidding me? Like Gary Vee, here's a cool thing. I can steal from his hustle. I can steal from his hard work. I can steal from his lessons, and it's free. So it's not really stealing. But like, the only reason you don't have mentors is because you don't think you need them. Like, Andy, why are you married? Because I wanted a wife. Like I needed a wife, you know? Why, you know, so if you don't have a mentor, it's not because they're not available. It's because you're not hungry enough to go get one. I have a ton of mentors. Ton. Some of them are younger than me, which is annoying, but true. Because that just makes me feel older, and I wish I was as smart as they were when I was their age. But like, mentors are they're literally free. Like, Claire, you're a mentor. Like, people listening to you right now, you are a mentor to them. And I forgot where you lived. Like, you could have said California, Argentina, Panama, you know, Jersey, whatever, right? That doesn't look like Jersey. It looks way too peaceful to be Jersey. But you're a mentor. And I just go, like, how do you find a mentor? How do you go get a mentor? Like, be humble enough to say, I don't know everything I should know. And then be smart enough to go, oh my gosh, they took all the hits for me. I can learn from them. Right?
Wow.
So I have a lot. So this speaks to two things, right? And this is funny. One, how humble I am, and two, how stupid I am, that I have a lot of mentors. Why? Because I'm humble and I know I need them. I know I'm a mess. I know I don't finish things well enough. You know, I don't manage people well enough. I have all these shortcomings, right? And I know that. I'm humble enough to know that. But also, like, I go, I need a lot of help. So why would I, like, go try to figure out, you know, this and this and this? I'll just go listen to a podcast. I'll go read a blog post. I'll go buy a book. You know, like, all of your books. Tell me, friends, if you bought one of Claire's books and you spent $15, which is a lot for a book nowadays, right? I mean, it's a lot. Tell me you're not going to get $15 out of ideas or value or joy. Like, I have this conversation every time. Books are mentors. Every time I go buy a book, I go, is that worth $10? Yes, I'm going to get $10 worth of peace or hope or business ideas, you know, out of them. And that's how I decide whether or not I'm going to buy my books. Now, the harder thing is when it's like a $3,000 conference, right? So I probably spent $2,000 going to social media marketing world.
Sure.
But you know what I went? I went with a bunch of people that I'm in a mastermind with, and the relationships deepened. And, you know, will I see the money from that? Listen, stop talking about money so much. Sometimes it's like peace. You know, do you want a bunch of money or do you want peace? You can have both, but if I had to choose one, I would take peace, right? And so I invest a lot in relationships, you know, and those people are my mentors. And I'll pay for that by buying one of your books, or I'll pay for that by going to social media marketing world. And sometimes it's free, like this podcast. So thank you for being a mentor to people.
Wow. Andy, you rock. So, Andy, tell us where people can find you and tell us what you're working on now.
I'm working on a lot of stuff, and I'm totally pumped about that. So one of the lessons Gary Vee taught me is don't be an expert until you've done something. So he says, the reason I can sit up here and yell at you about doing business better is, he said, because I've actually built businesses. Don't trust people unless they actually built a business, right? So a 24-year-old who's a life coach should not be coaching people that are 64, right? Because, like, they don't have enough life yet, you know? Now, that's not always true, but, like, usually it's like you don't coach what you haven't done, right? So, like, I'm not a very good soccer coach. Why? Because I'm not great at soccer. But thankfully, there's 6 and 7-year-olds, so I pull it off. So this is very fresh in my mind. So
just be one step ahead. Just
be one step ahead. It's like when I was a teacher, I would always be like literally 4 pages ahead, and if they ask a question beyond that, I go, whoa. The learning process, you got to just take it one step at a time. And I haven't read that section, right? Hey, I totally forgot what I was saying. I got off track.
I was asking what
where to
you're
find
working
me.
on now.
Okay, so I'm working on a ton of stuff, and Gary Vee taught me this. Like, I've always had this tension between I love technology and I love just inspire people, right? And his thing is, like, he inspires people and he coaches people and he's a thought leader, but he also has a business. So my business is digihowto.com, D-I-G-I, howto.com. And then my thought leadership stuff is takepermission.com. Now, I break a lot of rules. You're not supposed to have two blogs. I don't update them often enough. Blah, 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 blah. Regret. Should. But I have two things. Like, I am this guy who loves technology. And I also have this thought leadership thing. And what Gary Vee taught me is like, Andy, it's okay to have two things. And so the reason I can talk about Take Permission is because I moved my family 1,000 miles, right? And the reason I can talk about, the best, video conferencing app is because I'm a geek, right? So that's Digi How To and Take Permission. I just finished a book. It's 10,000 words. So it's a small book, but it's we'll put a lot of white space in it, called What Fear Says. And it's about pairs. Yeah. So I'm doing a series of What Fear Says. And the first one is, I think fear talks about 5 or 6 topics, but one of them is comparison. So one of the things is, why would I listen to your podcast when I can listen to another podcast? That's what fear will say to you, Claire. Why would they listen to me when they could listen to so-and-so?
Yeah. Fear
will say, why would they buy from me when they could buy from them? Right. So that's comparison. Right. And so I have basically 8 sentences that fear says, maybe 10. And then I write about that idea and why there's always a little truth in it and the rest of it's wrapped in a big fat lie. So What Fear Says, I think I'm on whatfearsays.com. So I'll redirect that. I am doing a course on content creation system. So I teach people how to use Evernote to capture all of your ideas, to gather them, to grow them, so you revisit them, and then you send them. You gain traction with them by posting them, whether it's a course or a podcast or your book or whatever it might be. And so that's going to come out in the next 7 or 8 days, and that's a content creation system. I have an Evernote course I still create. I'm in charge of a Rainmaker platform, Facebook page, which is basically a website platform. So I'm a part of a 48 Days mastermind with Dan Miller. Folks don't know who he is, you can look him up. And I'll probably write another Early to Rise book. I just did a reader survey, and so many people found out about me through that, and I really have missed the boat. Like, that should have been chicken soup for the soul for me. I should have sold billions, but I just stopped. People are really hungry for that, and I'm going to do, I think, an Early to Rise for dads, and just really target it for dads to build the habit of getting up early.
That's awesome, Andy. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for being here, and have a great week.
Bless you, my friend. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.